CUB Board of Directors meeting dated September 12th is now here called to order. Will the General Manager introduce our newest board member and administer the oath of office, please?
Thank you. We are very pleased to have with us Steve Clapp. Steve has a long history in being an entrepreneur, being a CFO, being a teacher, being a great guy, and he brings a skill set that is going to be a very big positive for this board and for CUB, and we're thrilled to have you. And for $20, if you would stand up.
Yes, sir.
And repeat after me. I, Steve Clapp,
I, Steve Clapp,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Director
That I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Director
of the Clinton Utilities Board
of the Clinton Utilities Board
of the City of Clinton,
of the City of Clinton,
Tennessee.
Tennessee,
which office I am about to assume,
which office I am about to assume,
and that I will support
and that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Tennessee,
and the state of Tennessee.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you so much.
Too long.
I'm sorry.
I got memory issues.
Does he get $20 for doing that?
No, I get the
Oh.
$20. Let's be clear. And by the way, you still owe me.
I would start changing cash down here, but that probably wouldn't look good.
Take out the pay.
He's got enough money, I'm sure.
Steve, I just want to say welcome aboard.
Thanks.
We're excited to have you. I think you will be a wonderful addition and will add great value to this board and to this organization. Do you have anything you want to say at this time?
No, I appreciate y'all letting me come on here. Greg told a bunch of lies, so I don't believe them, but Vicky's dealt with me before, so she knows what it's like, so. Penny lived near me, so she knows what it's really like, so.
Well, welcome aboard. Thank
Thank
you for being here. Seeing that there is no public, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. I would like to entertain a motion. I know a former chairman didn't find that was necessary, however, I do. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Uh-huh.
The minutes are approved. We'll move on to approval of vouchers. Everyone had an opportunity to look at the vouchers. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve vouchers as written.
Make that motion to approve the vouchers.
Have a motion, is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Motion and second. Do we have any discussion? Anything that jumps out or anybody wants to talk about any? Mr. General Manager, is there anything there that you'd like to point to our attention?
No, there's nothing that is aberrant in that. It's all pretty standard stuff.
So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vouchers are approved. At this point, I will turn it over to General Manager for the monthly reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll turn to your page that Dudley prepares, that is the revenue and expense summary, and before I ask him to speak to this, I think it's appropriate that I point out to you that if you'll look in electric for operating and maintenance expense on that fold-out sheet, where you'll see actual at $1,775,000 and the forecast at $1,781,000 with a $6,000 variance. I calculated that, Dudley, and it is 0.03% off. And this budget was designed, and he has a formula that he goes through, but this is 18 months old, what he forecasted in these expenses, and it's a tribute to his proprietary methodology on how he prepares his budgets. It's a lot easier for us to calculate operating and maintenance expense than it is to calculate purchase power costs, because that is slaves more to the weather. So I would like to publicly identify Dudley as being the crystal ball expert on the numbers, like nobody that I know. And with that, Dudley, if you wouldn't care to help the board cipher through some of these financials, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Sometimes I'm just lucky, though, I'll put it that way. for the month of July, this starts our fiscal year, the electric department had a net income of $300,000. The water and sewer had a net income of $51,000. If you look over here to this column, which Greg was referring to, our actual year-to-date, our forecasted, and then the difference, you can see that sales were less than we anticipated. It wasn't quite as hot as I thought it would be. But in the same turn, when our sales are down, what we have to pay TVA is down. So anytime you look down this column for our new board member, and that's a positive number, that's a positive thing. So if you take the difference between what I forecasted and what the actual sales less what we pay TVA was, it's about $34,500 different. So if you come down here to the bottom, we're about 30,000 different. So really, that's why we're off. And again, it can be off more than that, but I was pretty lucky this month. And if you get into the water and sewer department down here, our water sales were up a little more than anticipated. The sewer sales were up even more, and that's mostly industrial caused that. And our operating expenses were lower than we anticipated. So all in all, good month for both departments. We're quite pleased with how it's turned out, and we got a long year ahead of us. So, and that's all I have, unless you have specific questions.
Do we know anymore whether we're gonna be forced to do anything more because of last year's performance, or we pretty good there now?
Now that, we'll submit our audit. That's got to be submitted by January 1, and then they'll ask some questions and stuff. But what we've done should satisfy them. Even had we not done that, I believe I could have satisfied them by arguing where our cash position is and our debt and so forth. No debt, positive cash position. I believe we would have been okay.
Dudley, could you just briefly explain for our new board member what's the nature of the question, or
Okay.
the background?
What Steve is referring to is the state requires that water and sewer districts right here on this income before capital contributions have a positive number. And if it goes negative for 2 consecutive years, then they're going to start asking questions. And we were negative for 2 consecutive years. But we're zero debt, and we got 220 days of cash. So what drove us into being in a negative position was our depreciation, which is not a cash expense. You realize that.
Yeah.
And the state realizes that, but you had so many utility districts, these small mom and pops especially, that are trying to operate in the red, and you have elected officials that don't want to raise the rates, so they fight that until the state comes in and says, hey, you got to do something. And that's what Steve's referring to there. We were in the red 2 years in a row before capital contributions, but financially, we're in great shape.
So the positive in I guess starting July, is that do we do rate increases?
We had a rate adjustment
Okay.
effective July. Yes, sir.
Mr. General Manager, do these reports require approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the reports for July.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. General Manager, I'll defer to you for the project status reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll turn to, or flip to, as Dudley has up on the screen, project status for electric. We've got 2 projects that we are tracking. These are work orders. Both are in electric, and they both deal with an upgrade in the conductor and the feeders on Dutch Valley and Wolf Valley. The Dutch Valley feeder, the project is really a critical section of line that we're replacing because with a larger conductor, because of the age and the man that's on the current conductor along that line. This is also going to improve our ability for load transfer, either manually or automatically through Flizzer. And our Oliver Springs and Coalfield area, both are served by the same TVA source. And where that comes into play is essential For example, this past August 26th at 4:32 p.m., which is got all of our crews back in the stall, and they start early, they leave early, so they're heading to the house or have already headed that way. So at 4:32 p.m., August the 26th, TVA lost the 161 comes out of their Braytown substation. So it lost, we lost and de-energized our Petros sub, which put out 470 customers were immediately out of power. Within seconds, although I was told immediately, I'm going to now say within seconds, certainly less than a minute, through Flizzr, we had 100% of those 470 customers restored. And that means nobody's now getting back in the truck and heading to Petros and trying to do some switch or tracking line or anything. We immediately restored them through Flizzr, which gives us that capability because we essentially lock out the circuit and isolate the section that we need and then open up and re-energize up to that line. So we were able to do that. We were able to do that essentially instantaneously, and those folks didn't see anything more than a prolonged blink. So all of that conductor upgrade is working with us. It gives us, as you know, we have now tried to close our open gap for no more than 300 customers out at any one time for any given event where we drop a circuit. So as we put these the hardware on the lines, which goes out there and looks and sees what's going on and communicates back with our operators, we're able to minimize the amount of customers that's out with one event. Now, if a big tornado comes through, all bets are off. But generally, it's a single event that'll take a circuit out. So by bringing that down to 300, that's an optimal number for us. But we're looking over time to continue to shrink that number by putting more devices out there. That gives us that flexibility. And part of what we need in order to switch, in other words, transfer load, we need the conductor in place that'll carry that additional load. So both of these, West Wolf Valley and the Dutch Valley Road feeder upgrades will enhance that capability for us. And they are on time and on budget, it appears to be. So we're looking forward to a completion of West Wolf Valley by the end of November, and we'll push into March on the Dutch Valley feeder. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have on that. On our water status report, we're tracking one ongoing open work order, and this deals with two pumping stations that we have at Mariners Point. And it's been a long process, and we have revised the completion date more than once, and we've had the weather was contributing to that, and we had a really fine customer down there that had the patience of Job. We had what amounted to sounded like a diesel tractor sitting out in his backyard right next to his swimming pool for a very long time, cycling on and off, and he was very patient with us, and we appreciate so much him working with us on that. We are now got both of these pump stations are operational. Both of them have completed startup, and both of them are online. And really, what we're having them do now is a punch list, but the bypass pump that we had in his yard is no longer there. So we're happy that's, and no happier than he is, that's gone. So that should be completed. Other than this punch list, we ought to be completed, and then we'll have a closing, if not next month, then in our October board meeting. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer on that. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, on the project status reports.
Will you continue with the approval of the work order, please?
I will. If you'll, your packet should have work order 1100. It's out of our electrical engineering, and it is this aerial cable on Ridge Circle. This project will replace about 1.8 miles of single-phase number 4 ACSR primary conductor with three-phase, 1-aught, all aluminum cable, aerial cable in the Ridge Circle area, and it's off of McAfee Lane, which is near Norris Lake in Andersonville. This line is one of our most heavily loaded single-phase lines, and for the last several years, we've been near at the top of our list because we track outages. So we look in areas that are concentrated, and if we see outages, well, for whatever reason, we track that, and it's been at the top of our list, and it's been on our radar because of that. This upgrade, and this is also a budgeted item, this upgrade will provide additional capacity, better reliability, and the ability to better balance our system load, which helps reduce our system losses. The initial estimate included in this year's capital budget for this project was $340,000, but after final engineering, our final estimate with a 10% contingency is right at that $339,383. So I move, Mr. Chairman, that the board consider approval of work order 1100.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second? Can Greg make that motion?
Now, can't make the motion, but.
You're
but
moving for somebody to make it.
That's correct.
Is
I'll
there
make the motion.
is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. You would like me to just go ahead and sign this approved by?
Yes, sir. And then I'll get that.
And then will you continue with review?
I will. To follow up on last month, and I thought with a new board member that I would quickly go through this. Some of it's a little bit changed, and I appreciate some of you coming by to talk about it. Director Combs made, I think, a very targeted and appropriate improvements, and I've incorporated that, and I hope that he sees that. But our rates and fees, first of all, what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the results of the board's decision to remove tap fees for residential development, which is a 3/4 inch line and a 3/4 inch meter. And the tap fees that are associated with that, we're now, in order to what hopefully will be a great signal to our local developers in order to build within our service area. And since this is specifically water and sewer, it primarily, other than in our Claxton area, it's primarily we're talking about within the city limits. So it's appropriate for, I think, to see where we're at. I remember, Dudley, you told me it's all the way over to the left here to get that, but it's not doing anything. So let me just do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Where we stand in terms of what we charge our customers and where we compare with everywhere else, because I'm going to do a comparison, Steve, about the rates and also about the fees that are associated. As you see, we are very low at $53 for the average customer for 5 gallons of water and sewer. Compared to everyone else locally, we're about half. Certainly the East Tennessee, which is 32 utility companies, they're at 92% higher than what we are. So where we stack up in what we charge our customers is essentially about half of what everybody else is doing. So when we look at tap fees, we've got an array of fees for different size taps depending on the size of the meter. And what we're talking about specifically removing is this 3/4 inch, which we charge $450 for water, $450 for sewer. It's been called a tap fee. And that's what we're talking about removing for residential customers. So
Just for the 3/4?
just for the 3/4. The where we line up with other utilities in terms of charging, at $450 for water and sewer, which is, anybody can add that to 900. We were at 900, and everybody else is above us. Even Norris, which says $1,100, their caveat there is whichever is higher, their cost to install or their tap fee, and they can't do it for 11. So it's always been greater than that. So even that's higher, but we were doing it for $900. The average for East Tennessee Development District is $2,227. And Lenoir City, which was our target comparing utility, they're at $1,900. So when we looked at LCUB, because LCUB was brought up to us and held up to us as a utility that was very friendly and had policies and fees that were accommodating and accommodated residential development, and that was one of the reasons why they were doing so well. Well, we looked at electric at that time and the numbers, and we found that, and shared with them, in which they agreed, we were $60,000 or $70,000 less than what LCUB would have charged. But for water, there are fees that are other than these tap fees, and these came right off of their website, and we verified them with them. They've got a capital reserve fee, a maintenance fee, and a special water, wastewater assessment fee. They're not the only ones that have this.
Greg, do we have those fees currently,
No,
previously?
no.
Okay.
No, we didn't have any of those fees. No. They are more typical because I pulled these off of Nashville. They've got availability study is $500. They got capacity fees for sewer. It's $750. Water's $250. They got a plan review fee depending on what you're reviewing: the water line, the sewer line, a manhole. They've got inspection fees for grinder pumps, pumping stations, manholes, and then they charge you by linear foot for water and sewer. So everybody has a fee structure in place, either for cost recovery somehow to get a return on cost, or as a revenue stream, and a lot of these fees are revenue streams. So when we looked at Lenoir City and we applied these fees, which are in addition to the tap fee, we see these special assessment fees, and they go on the average gallon of daily use, which they calculate for the development, and then they calculate a number for that. So I went in and I looked at what they did, and I went to an average customer, what an average customer would use, and these fees, including their tap fees, is $3,335 per lot, which is required by the developer to pay up front at the time that their designs are approved by the utility. So we never even charge the developer a tap fee. We always charge the builder. When you wanted service, when you applied for service, that's when you were asked to pay a tap fee. So oftentimes it was the homeowner that did that, or if a developer did it when they had somebody in there, they would come in and they would get service, there would be a tap then. So I put down here where I'm going to go, because I'm proposing that a capital charge of $200 for water and $200 for sewer, which is a total of $400. So even though this column for CUB says zero, I'm looking to go to $400 on that. But when you compare that to $3,000, it's a lot better. This reinforces, I think, what we've been saying all along with facts, that we need to dispel the myth that we are not developer friendly in our policies and fees, because it would be significant for the development that we were most concerned about, that was brought to our attention, these fees at Lenore City were over 500,000 additional dollars paid up front by the developer that they wouldn't pay here. And if our friends at ACWA, if they did charge a tap fee, and I don't know what additional fees they have, it would have been right at 300,000, 298,000, should they charge them tap fees. So the bottom line is, what are we doing and what is changing, if anything? Now, we've already incorporated all of the provisions that the board directed us to do in terms of manholes, in terms of easements, in terms of extensions and rebates. Those are all incorporated. In the water and sewer, we're trying to lock down on these tap fees, and what we're essentially doing here is no water and sewer tap fees for residential 3/4 inch service. All of the other tap fees are going to stay in place, which is the 1 inch and it goes all the way up. That we're not talking about changing because we're really focused on residential development here. However, any cost associated with any tap fee is what I'm suggesting that CUB has to participate in construction of. In other words, if we literally have to do the tap, then we will charge them the tap fee or the recovered cost of construction, whichever is higher.
So if we do the work,
We charge them for
we
the
get-
work.
Yeah.
That's
we
right.
get paid.
That's exactly right.
Makes perfect sense.
Again, doesn't touch residential, but since we're talking tap fees, I needed to include that in the conversation. Cost recovery. What I suggest is CUB will hold the developer, the owner, responsible for cost incurred by CUB in support and construction of the residential project, if there is any. So if they go out and they're constructing something and they hit a main, they're going to have to pay for that. You see, if they go out and there's a vault or something that they can't put in or they choose not to put in, and we do that, we're going to charge them for it. That'll be a discussion. It won't be a surprise to them, those things. If we go out and they're laying line and they require to have one or more of our people in the field inspecting, because we inspect the backfill and everything else, then we're going to charge them for that employee's time. What it cost us.
Greg, is there an acceptable standard how we determine what we charge?
Yes, and I wanted to make it easy because I'm not going to charge administrative fees, overheads, anything like that. If we send a guy out there making $25 an hour and he's out there more than an hour, I'm going to charge him $25. If he goes out there for 30 minutes, I'm not going to charge anything. But if he's out there for 8 hours, then it's going to be 8 times 25. So it'll be the actual direct hourly rate that we pay.
So it's not an arbitrary,
It's not. It'll be
Number of
specific
process, okay.
to the individual because some of our, depending on what we have to inspect is who we send out. So whatever that hourly rate is for that person, but I'm not going to do partial hours. Do you see?
It's labor plus supplies.
I'm not even, yeah, well, if it
There's
comes
got
down
to be some
to,
kind of
that's right.
boundary around supply
That's right,
costs.
but
But
I don't really see any of that. All I see is potentially inspection. But if you're out there because they're not ready and they call you to come out and you go out there and they're not ready for you and you stand around and do that, then I'm just going to recover the hourly cost. Not overheads, just straight cost.
No benefits.
No benefits, no nothing.
Okay.
Again, I don't want to nickel and dime them, and I don't even see this coming into play very often because I'm not going to waste the time of trying to do something where we're out there 45 minutes or 48 minutes. It'll be in increments of an hour. And it's always going to,
By not loading it with overhead and benefits,
Right.
you're cutting some cost out of it for people that
No
you could
doubt.
you could theoretically be charging, but you're trying to be nice and work.
All we're trying to do is recover, and that's a direct cost, and it's easy for anybody to calculate. This guy makes X, and he was out there 3 hours, and that's what we're gonna charge you.
What would our loaded cost be? Y'all have a feel for that?
Yes, about twice what that is, for
That's what I'm saying.
depending on that level
Okay,
of
that's-
employee,
that's what I would
because,
expect.
because the hospitalization, and we put all of that, because they're not high dollar, a lot of these are not high dollar, those costs would work into that, and it would be, you know, significant. You wouldn't get less than $50 an hour, I wouldn't think, for any of that. And then once you put the truck in there, and the transportation and the insurance associated with that, all of that would be, but I'm not trying to do that, I'm not
That's being fair.
trying to make money, I'm just trying to give a placeholder if they keep my guy out there for 8 hours. So,
That's not an insignificant PR point.
right,
I mean, we're eating half their cost, really, by charging that way.
no doubt, no
That's
doubt.
probably something we ought to.
And probably
actually-
more than that, because I'm gonna lean on not charging them anything, if I can help it. If you're gonna go out there and say, and they're all ready to go, and you've gotta do this, law looks good to me, this is essentially in Clinton, so it's not like I'm an hour windshield time. If all I've gotta do is, my guy do this, I'm not gonna charge him for that. I'm just saying, if you keep me out there for 8 hours, I'm gonna charge you.
Makes sense.
There.
The new thing is our efforts to recognize that there is a contribution to capital for each development. If you have 1,000 homes, you take it to an extreme. It impacts the whole system, and the whole system has to respond to that. Remember, we don't get anything but our rates in order to support our capital projects, our debt service, and maintenance. Every entity recognizes that there are additional costs associated with any development. That's why the state and the federal government and TVA, when we do industry, we wheel and deal a bit, because they recognize that they bring advantages into the community, which brings advantages to the state. There are taxes associated with that. The city recognizes an impact, which is why they charge a building permit. I call down and say, what does it cost for an average $200,000 house? And that's about a $1,000 building permit. You see, not the property tax is what funds the police and the garbage pickup and the fire and things like that. But the impact that they have in our community is $1,000. I've got, and I don't know what this number eventually is going to be, because I think I can see us using this as we determine if there's a significant impact of new development to where we've got to take it costs $400,000 for that pump station at Miller Road. You see, if we had to put another pump station in there, I wouldn't be wanting anybody in South Clinton to be paying for that. You see, so there is an impact, and how much is that? I don't know. Is it something? No doubt about it. And this is my efforts to recognize that there is an impact, and this is a $200 capital, I call it a capital charge, a capital reserve charge, I don't want to use the word impact because that's a distasteful phrase to some folks, but there is a charge that I think is appropriate, and I'm calling it a capital charge, and I'm thinking it's $200 per lot per service, which again, that's $400 if they have water and sewer. So that's essentially what I'm recommending, and the recommended motion is exactly that page before that. I hit that and it worked, Dudley, so it
You
was
threw me off.
pretty impressive. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. anybody has.
So, I'm not sure where we left it off. We had a motion and a second, and then I think we tabled it. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I will open up discussion. And I'd
My
like to start
my
with
concern
Steve.
last time was that, maybe a chart or two before here, this, when Greg put up the numbers of zeros for Clinton and numbers for everybody else, that this was an opportunity to create a little mistrust when we
Right.
snuck up the next day with a $400 charge. So Greg and I had a good discussion about that, and he's put it in the chart, so it's up front, people see it, and you don't get backdoored by the
And I'm not even
charge.
gonna put that chart in that says no, 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 because that infers that there's nothing anywhere, do you see?
Yeah, so I'm comfortable with the way he's got it now.
I think it would be good, and we've had this discussion before about just having developers in here for a meeting and just going over everything so there's no misunderstanding, and I think that's what's been our problem in the past is.
I hope to have that with the chamber. I've talked to Rick, because I think that's an appropriate venue, you know, the,
Have it there or have it here?
well, I would think there, because it would also then give the city an opportunity. What I think we need to get out of is CUB, is the gatekeeper for residential development, which is not the case at all. Do you see? We can show and do show that compared to anywhere else that you want to land, anywhere else, anywhere, we are significantly, materially less cost associated to do business.
I think to Greg's point, I was with you, Vic, I thought, well, this is the perfect place to do it, but by doing it at the chamber and inviting the city, we recognize that there are other shareholders in
Right.
the efforts to attract residential development. And it seems like CUB has carried the load of residential development when there's several different players that play a role in that, and certainly the city is a part of that, and it helps. The young kids have a term, throw shade on it. It's just resetting and recalibrating, saying, wait a second, it's not just us. Everyone else has to do their part. We're doing our part. And that's my opinion.
I agree with what you're saying. I was just thinking facility. This is just a great facility, but we could
Oh,
set it
yes,
up
well,
down there.
well, I mean, that's a possibility because of the meeting room we have back there. You know, I don't know how many would come, but we can, what I want to do is put a great presentation together
Come to you.
in order to,
Come to you next.
Well, wherever we do it, we can work the logistics out, but
Yeah.
just, my point was, we need to get this out to our developers, because that's where the conversation started.
Steve, I reckon. Yes, ma'am.
It might make more sense to have it at the chamber area. You know, I still find developers who are reluctant to come down
I
here and
agree
stand in front of
100%.
CUB because of probably unjustified fears, but they won't come. If we have it somewhere else under the guise of
And-
development, they may come.
and let Rick, like I say, and then he can coordinate with the city, because they're really good folks down there, and maybe out of that meeting, if there is some streamlining that can be done, because most of the problem is communication, in my opinion, and I'm hoping to have a lot of good information to hand out and recognize that we have made some substantial efforts in how we communicate our policies and what those policies are and what our fees are and everything associated with that, in order to say, hey, come build and develop here.
I agree, and I agree with what y'all are saying. We do need to have it, let somebody else do it.
On,
I
on a
agree.
common ground, and then that way,
Yeah, I agree.
once we change the perception of CUB, in the future, I think this would be a great place to come back to have those kinds of conversations and those kinds of meetings. But I think, Steve, I agree with you 100%. It's just, it's a common ground where nobody feels interrogated or intimidated or.
Let me say, not to put shade on any of this.
taught us a new
Throw-
We
Okay.
will never be able, no matter what we do, unless we give them money, and then it'll be more money next year. There's nothing that we can do, no policy that we can put in place that I'm gonna be able to get a statue of me in the Developers Hall of Fame, because it's all about, and they do the right thing. That is their job, to minimize the cost. And everything, go buy a car at Ronnie's, and you're gonna do everything you can to get those costs right down to getting free oil at the end, do you see? So, as a shield at the front, as we are, protecting our ratepayers from subsidizing private property, there's always more that they think should be done.
Zach,
Go ahead, and then I'll come back to you.
you may be the only conduit to bring this thought up where it needs to be. But if we had this meeting somewhere under the auspices of the chamber, it sure would be nice if somebody else in the city, some other stakeholder, could also stand up and present something they're gonna offer in this big picture to help things, as rather than just CUB changing an offering.
Yeah, I agree, and I had met with General Manager yesterday, and it was brought to my attention that there are other people that are responsible for residential development than CUB, and he's absolutely right. And I think that was a thought that might have come from one of our board of directors, and I thought it was a very accurate statement. And I know that the political will is there, and that the right partnerships are there with the city and the chamber and the county. And so I agree. I don't know what that would be.
They're all afraid of cutting revenue streams, which will be difficult, I understand that. But I've offered them a couple of things that they just defer new revenue streams to get the builders going. So there are some things they can do if
Yeah.
they're really serious about it.
And I will speak with Roger, our city manager, about that, and I agree. And I think, want to defer right here to my new board member. You've been wanting.
Yeah, a couple things. One is, I think the neutrality is important, not, one, to get city involved, because I think it is somebody, it's other people's responsibility as well. But two, if you have it here, it's the gatekeeper, and you don't want to be the gatekeeper. You're right, you're not you're not the one that's 100% responsible for making this happen. Two, on this water and sewer issue, the other thing you gotta watch, and I'll be curious to see how it compares, how the budget plays out. If the state's been here twice, if the state's been griping because we've had 2 underwater years.
They haven't griped.
Well, I know, but they will be, that's coming. The other thing we gotta do is not make sure we don't end up in a third year where they do come in and get involved. And so as we're adjusting these things somewhat on a little bit of, and I don't mean this wrong, but on a little bit of a trial and error to kind of figure out where's the exact formula, we don't want to throw ourselves in where we, as a board, we end up with, and we have great cover as well. 3 years in a row is not the place to be. And so I think that's got to be kept in the back of the mind, because this is if I look at the financial statements historically, this is the smallest margin of any of them. And so we don't have a lot of room to play here. So we need to be a little bit careful. We put the rate increases, we're sitting on we went from 900 to 0, and now we're kind of trying to creep back up to 400, which sounds reasonable. But you can't put sewer in for free either in taps. It's just, that doesn't work that way. I've already paid mine because I've connected myself, and I've connected houses I've paid.
You're
There's a
lucky.
historical issue, for the people that've been around paying them too. So I think we all understand we need some residential growth, but as we do that, that's got to be applied outside the city limits as much as inside the city limits. So
If you do a tap, I'm gonna inspect.
have fun.
For 45 days, I'm
I'm gonna
gonna
hire the
inspect.
crew out for a couple of days, hang out and eat some hamburgers or something.
I'm interested in, Steve, what's your thoughts on Steve's comments there?
Well, I certainly agree. Any money we're potentially going to lose, if we lose a lot of dollars, says we're having a lot of growth and a lot of development in Clinton, because this is only going to happen if we got a lot of houses going in
Sure.
and subdivisions. So, CUB may have to back off and say, okay, this is going so well.
Yeah.
We gotta raise rates to keep our balance. But I think if we get to that position, it says something is working.
Yeah, I just don't want the comptroller to come in and tell me it's not. And I've been around enough governmental entities and managed hospitals for governmental entities in the state. You know, did a stint with Vicky on the school board. You really don't want, you want to keep them out as long as you can. I just don't want, I think it's a challenge because we're talking about predominantly residential growth here in the city limits. And the thing is, we got to balance that for, kind of the people that are outside as well. And I told Greg earlier, I'm watching a situation where elected folks didn't do their job, and it was kind of advantaged one way or the other with folks.
In another city,
In
just
another
to be
city,
clear.
not here, no,
Yes,
not
just
in
to be
Anderson
clear.
County, not
Just
where, but
want to help
but
you
it's
with
something
that.
else I'm watching in another part of the state, and what you don't want to do is have somebody pop up and go, hey, you kind of bent a little bit too far this way, and that's what we got to watch. But I think we all understand we need growth. I think CUB's trying. It sounds like you're trying to find ways to make it work, and I appreciate that. Both on the board as well as personally. So I think that's a good thing. So
I think Dudley and Greg have raised rates recently to cover status quo to keep us
Yes.
in the black.
yeah, that's what's
That's right.
So,
Right.
any problems in the future will come along with super growth.
Right.
So we can keep an eye on that and make sure we don't put ourselves
What-
in trouble.
What is everybody's opinion on the timing? In my discussion with Greg, Greg seemed to be open to being flexible to, if we wanted to change that to March or to even reflect the fiscal year. What is the board's feeling about the timing of the capital charge?
when did you just put your rate increase in? July?
I think that I've heard some feedback that they would like to see us, there are some ratepayers out there that would like to see us delay this to July,
You mean
June 30th or July 1, 2020.
you mean potential ratepayers? I guess.
Yeah,
To just
And
match
I
up with our calendar.
I don't have a significant feeling one way or the other, to match up with the fiscal calendar, match up with when we raised rates. I'd like the board's collective thoughts on that.
My discussion with Greg, this is a hedge of its bets, that if what we've done causes us to lose money, this is a way to try to get us back on even keel. It may turn out that this $400 charge is not needed, but if it does, we'll have to do something. So how long we want to go before we impose it, how long we want to wait and see the impact of what we've already done. I
Do
don't
you have
know.
a strong thought one way or the other?
Only because I'm not aware of any new large developments that are planned in the next 6 months or so. You may be, I'm not. And that would say this one didn't come into play.
Yeah. Greg?
I agree, we set a rate, which we have talked about, long before we talked about any of this development, we talked about last year, we were gonna look at a rate increase. And to be clear, Steve, we always have net income, we've had net income, not net loss, and this is a new regulation that the state came into before capital contributions, because some of the districts were playing off of that. So we're very comfortable, and we've talked to the state, and the state is extremely thrilled with our position.
Yeah.
And so it would have never been an issue, but we've got a responsibility to operate in the black, irrespective of what our depreciation is.
Yep.
We need to operate in the black, irrespective of no debt and a large cash reserve. We still need to operate in the black. Our rates are going to put us operating in the black, and a lot of this is lost potential lost revenue, not an expense. Do you see? It's a revenue stream that we've cut to zero on tap fees, and it's not an additional expense associated with that, because they're gonna do the construction anyway. It is, to me, very important that we recognize at the time, because we've been in a transition period. If you remember that we talked about everyone is going to be retroactive back to whatever we finally decide. In terms of tap fees, if someone came in right now, we would tell them that there's policies in place for no tap fees, but it's not firmed up because we don't know the other side of that about cost recovery for construction. That hasn't been clarified and articulated until now. You see, as part of the same policy of no tap fees, however, you have to, all the construction cost is on you, and the recovery, anything else. This capital charge is, first of all, it's not very much under anybody's. I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker for any developer, especially if they're thinking they're going from 900 to 400, in the big scheme of things. But to put it in play, because there's no question we've got to have some ballast in play. And to me, the time to do it, although you give them this moratorium, essentially a 6-month, get everybody that's in the cycle will fall. Anybody that starts before January or March or whatever date, but I'm more concerned about getting it approved
Right.
than I am this effective date.
Do you have strong aversions to pushing it to the fiscal year, July 2020?
No, as long as it is effective, if we have an effective date of July 2020. And then to Steve's point, if I am now going, my God, this is killing us, because it has been $150,000 in the past, this revenue stream, but it's not offset with the cost recovery. So that's where I don't know how that's going to go. If we effective this in July of 2020, and then it'll just automatically come into play, and everybody knows that it's coming into play, then it may encourage them, if I'm going to start something,
Right.
let me start it now,
And give them the spring to do it.
because that's really, nobody's going to build anything in January, you see. So if they're going to start, all the
Weather like
summer
this.
startups, all the summer startups are going to be in the spring. I'm great with that. I am great with that, because if we get it in the books, so to speak, everybody knows that it's
Right.
coming, and we don't have to revisit
Right.
this.
And
And the only thing we can do is adjust it. I think the only thing we'll ever do is adjust it up if we need to, and for that, there'll be a year's worth of justification.
And I think it gives us a little more time, and I think it shows even further good faith on CUB, saying, hey, look, this is what we were thinking about doing, and we even kicked that out 6 more months to allow any developers an opportunity to take advantage of.
That are even thinking about it now, they've got plenty of time to start, and once they start the process,
They're grandfathered in.
if they start it June 30th,
Yeah.
then they'll be good to go.
What is everybody else's thoughts on it? I'm sort of leaning towards that July date.
One more aspect, and I don't know that I care when it starts, but Greg and I talked the other day, and I think he's a little less sure how we might do this. But I said, if we put that fee out there and it turns out we don't need it, let's put it in an escrow account somewhere for future upgrades and development, and just start building our fund out there if we gotta increase a water plant somewhere, or increase a line somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Steve, you have any thoughts about January, July?
I would, unless, the guys say, January 1's a problem, or we got to do it January 1. I'd kick it to July and as much because you just put a rate increase in July
Yeah, you
this
see
year.
how that plays out.
And I don't think you want to, I think you would like to avoid being seen as kind of whipsawing. And so if you could kind of put one in and go, okay, we're going to let this sit, plus it kind of lets everybody kind of get their stuff done they want to get done. We're going to, and you got something everybody knows about coming into July 1, you're going to see you may see a lot of motivated people coming in here the next 9 months.
Not for $400, but
I
we'll
agree with
use
you,
it. We'll
but
use
there are
it.
people that,
I think it's as
There's
much as the way it looks. I think it's a good faith gesture on the utility board's part, because this has caused, I think a rash of rumors that CUB is walking back the quote progress that was made, and that was news to me because I didn't know we were walking back anything, and this is such a minor part of the overall all that we did. I'd hate for this to be the headline on really 6 or 7 different issues that we changed or we tweaked. And so I don't want this to steal the show. And I think if we can, I think it's a perfect say, we raised rates in July. We're going to give this a year, see number one, how it plays out on our end financially to make sure that we're not being, irresponsible. Because I do understand what you're saying. We are good with the state, but I don't want those gentlemen or those ladies to show up and start, I don't. Not that they wouldn't find anything but wonderful snacks and waters and a well-run utility. So is there a motion? I'm gonna get my parliamentary procedure right. Do I have a motion then to amend the recommended motion to July 1, 2020?
just before we vote or make a motion, you good?
Yes, sir, and I think as long as we're getting it in, I'm good.
Okay.
I make a motion to move the effective date to July 1, 2020.
And accept the language as written.
Yes.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any reservations?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Any opposed? I need to start saying that. I was pretty sure everybody was.
Blame it on the new guy. You can always blame it on me.
Unanimous.
It's okay.
All right, motion carries. Great. Other business. General Manager, do you have any other business? I have a few.
I do, Mr. Chairman. If you'll indulge me just for a second, I received we had a safety audit, which on September the 4th, and I just got the return back from that. This is an annual audit. It's done by and through our insurance company, because our rates are affected by that, what their findings are. There is over 300 items that they test for compliance. I mean, they're out there on the trucks, they're out there at the substations, they're at the water plant, they're in the warehouse. I mean, they're looking at personal protective gear that our guys are going. They're on site on the crew, so they do a great job. We nearly achieved a perfect score. 2 trucks had a mounted fire extinguisher where the indicators showed that they were in discharge. And that is something, because we have a checklist that they're required to go through every day, and part of that is checking that they've got a good fire extinguisher. Well, it was checked that it was good that morning, and apparently it was in discharge, when the inspector went by, and of course we talked to them about that, and apparently they checked to make sure it was still hanging, which is different than checking to see if the meter. So those deficiencies were immediately corrected, and the appropriate accountability and measures were taken for those that were responsible, because I believe that's important in safety. The little things take care of the big things. Our safety program we have with JTNS, which is the Tennessee Job Safety and Training, and that includes providing external safety training. They come in once a month, oftentimes, and it's conducted by an ex-lineman that has a lot of experience, and they have videos that they put on, or a PowerPoint that addresses one or two particular safety topics. Now, most utilities, as you probably know, have a dedicated full-time safety coordinator. And it's my intent to have a dedicated full-time safety coordinator. Our friend Ernie Bowles, along with as many other duties and responsibilities that he had, he assumed the responsibilities of the internal safety coordinator. He did education and classes and training, even after hours he did that. And he also worked with regulatory compliance. We currently have about 25 policies that are mandated by OSHA, that are mandated by the federal government, like our oil spill prevention. And of those, these 25, they are by mandate to be reviewed and changed over time. So it's a moving target that we constantly have to hit, and he did all of that. So I'm actively now looking to try to fill that spot. What I would like to do, and it's my intention unless I see frowns from the board, so without objection, I'm going to hire a full-time safety coordinator, and I'm going to enlist Ernie's expertise to provide targeted training, supervision, inspections, regulatory compliance, and if necessary, accident investigation. But that will be more of a consultant, and that will be somewhere south of $500 a week until I can get somebody to do that. But that's my intention, unless I see somebody that's not happy, then we can talk more offline on that.
We need safety. It's important. It's what we do.
And
We
what
gotta keep
a-
people safe.
Great opportunity. Apparently, he's not on the lake during the winter, so I mean, that's good for us. So he's very good, because he's done this, and he'll be very good and targeted in what he does, and it'll help me get this mandatory safety requirements put into place. So I just want to let you know that.
I've seen Ernie a couple of times up at Habaneros,
So-
and he seemed awful happy.
He
not having
does,
to go to
buddy.
work.
I mean, he is, he's just a little too happy. You know, it's just kind of irritating. But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, just real quick, I wanna, is there any outstanding, questions about our residential development initiatives? Does everybody feel comfortable where we are? Everybody feel good? Steve?
One of the questions I had last time, if you remember, was that I didn't feel like I had seen a real final
Right.
form comprehensive. And when Greg and I talked the other day, he's working on a document about that thick.
I'm aware.
That is a real
It's a
checklist,
good
detailed
document.
plan,
It's
and
helpful.
we talked about putting a highlight sheet up in the front of it.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna get there to have all of that captured.
So those questions that you have from the previous, are you satisfied? Thank you.
That's water and
It's
sewer too, by the way, because electric, we've already got those, and you should have those sheets.
Yeah.
That already, that's part of what we hand out to our customers in electric, that have all of those features that we talked about, and changes and additions and procedures already in stone.
So what can I accurately state this month in city council? Our initiatives can be found?
Yes, I mean, they've got them all right here. You know, you had, I think I sent them out in May, but they're checklist for underground residential, and I've highlighted here those policies that were changed to
Right.
conform.
Where can they find that? Is that ready for public
It
dissemination?
is. We hand it to
So
anybody
just
interested.
is available at CUB.
That's
I can
exactly
sort of
right.
generically say that.
That's
and-
exactly right. What I couldn't do is in concrete and firm up the water and
Until we-
wastewater.
until we did this,
Until we did
yeah.
this, right.
Okay, I'm satisfied. I would like to suggest and get the board's input on having an hour's board workshop, and the purpose of the workshop, and to do it sometime in the fourth quarter, would be just to refresh, and we've got a new member, board responsibilities, Title 18, which is our Constitution. I mean, this is our governing document, you know. Just review Title 18, go over the board's fiduciary duties, review some board best practices. And the purpose of that, I think it's important. When I got on this board, there's just a lot I didn't know, and there was a lot of misinformation that I came and showed up to the party with. And it would have been beneficial if we had a meaningful discussion as a board, and it's in a workshop situation. And let's find out what we don't know. Let's dispel any misunderstandings if there are any. And if there are challenges that need to be met, let's talk about what they are. And I want to get the board's thoughts, starting with our newest board member.
That's fine, man.
Ms. Benny, how about you?
I think it sounds like a great idea.
Steve?
I'm fine, I'm just not here October, November much, so it might be hard to.
Okay.
The other thought, the 3 classes that you and I went to.
Yes.
I think if Steve gets through those.
Maybe we
it
should
will
wait,
help him
we
learn
should
a
wait
lot
to do the
about this
workshop
business.
until,
Yeah.
but I'd like you to get on that. So, by the way, you gotta go to some training if you didn't
Well,
know.
and I went to some, Greg and I were talking about this last week. I mean, I went to some with the school board, and he said I've got to do some more.
It's online. We all have to do, we're gonna get you. The good news is, we're a year out on most and more than that on some of you. So there's nothing in the next quarter or even 6 months.
Actually, for me, if I can knock it out sooner rather than later, because I'm in a.
Well, we'll get
window,
we'll get an email out to you, and we'll show everybody's schedule and then opportunities.
I'm at my, whatever I've got to do personally.
Yeah, well, everybody has to do, you know, I think, Vicki, you're still in good shape until you're reappointed, you know. You're in good shape because you just took it. So, and I think y'all are in good shape for, if you've got 12 hours over 2 years or something like that.
Got 12 months to take 12 hours. He does and Penny does. But
To squeeze
that's
it in
offered
quickly
online
would be a
now.
big step up.
That's fine. Like I said, I've got a window the next bit of time where I can do my stuff I need to. So, and I'm fairly available.
Well, I'm not ready to conduct a workshop yet, and I wanna get some materials that work. So when I was on the Junior Achievement of East Tennessee board, and we had a board retreat, and there was a lot of information about best practices for boards, and it was very helpful to me. And I thought, you know, that could be helpful for us. So I wanted to see if there's a willingness to want to do that, and we'll figure out the future of when to do that. And then finally, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to serve for you as your chairman. I appreciate it. It's an honor, and it's important that this year we reestablish trust and communication and understanding between this board and our management and the public. And I think that CUB has a very compelling story to tell, and we have to do a better job of accurately telling the truth of what's going on in our great utility and with our people. We need to be bragging on our people, not in a way to be prideful about it, but there's a lot of misinformation that circulates. I was approached at a wedding this summer, and the gentleman was a family member, and he said, you know, I heard that the board just reneged on all the residential development. I said, where did you hear that? And if he's telling me that of a wedding, who else is he told? And why? Where does that come from? I was like, I'm on the board. We got crossways at a wedding, so anyway, I think it's important. You know, Greg's coming up on a contract year, so we want to handle that appropriately and as smoothly as we can, right? And the key to all this is good communication. If any board member has a question, you're going to start at the general manager's level, you know, and ask and seek. because the general manager will provide you the information that you seek, but ask. And there's no agendas, and the only agenda here is to further a great utility and to live in transparency and the truth. And then finally, I want to say, encourage people that have problems to seek help with the staff. I don't feel that it's our role as board members to necessarily solve problems that need to be dealt with at a lower level, at a staff level. It's not appropriate. It's, jumping the chain of command, so to speak. There's people here that know more about this utility than I, and they need to be the ones dealing with it. And then this board needs to enforce and trust and support our management. Hold them accountable, serve as that oversight for sure, but, we're going to be a board that's unified, and we're going to have disagreements, and I encourage discussion, and I discourage debate, and I encourage, I never start saying discourage, I encourage that, and ask questions, and ask the hard questions, because that's what we're here to do. But we're going to do so in a manner that we're in the spirit of friendship.
Well, and just piggyback on what you said, Greg and I, and we've known each other for a while. Everybody knows he's been in town, but I've sat in that CEO chair now for the last 15 years at two different companies. The board's job is to govern. Greg's job is to run the operations. And he and I had that conversation already. That I'll probably be the obnoxious one at times, and I'm pretty hard on the financials given what I've been through the last 5 years. But so it's more about economic stability. That's financial viability. I want to make sure we're there because I've seen in 226 days is good, by the way. But in the same right, if we have a problem with operations, it's through Greg. It's not anywhere else. And I totally agree with you because I've been there and I've had boards the last 15 years, 20 years, farther back, I guess, that kind of kept it at the board level and not below. And I think that's important, and particularly in having sat in that chair. That one's hard because he's balancing too many people. And oh, by the way, this is a political animal because you hear that crap out in town. Having worked in multiple small towns in 4 states, the last 15 years, you kind of figure out pretty quick all small towns are pretty much the same. Some of them have worse problems than others, but all this rumor mill crap that goes on stuff. I deal in data and I deal in facts. So we got a job to carry our water as well with people. So, yeah. But anyway.
Penny,
No, I'm excited about the direction that we're going. I feel like that we're certainly making headways, and I think it's important that we focus on that, strengthening that communication between the board and the staff and the community as well. I would like to ask our general manager about the gentleman who was electrocuted and suffered the burns. We've not had an update on him recently. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name.
Babasset.
Thank you.
Big Babasset. Great guy. Great employee, great lineman. He's back at work.
He is back at work.
In the bucket.
And doing well.
Doing great.
Great. Okay. I don't recall an update that we've had recently, and I just wanted to check on.
could you express to him that the board inquired to his well-being
We'll do it.
and that we
And
are
he'll appreciate that.
proud of his work? Anything else? Dr. Violet?
Just want to welcome Steve to the family. It's nice working with you again. He'll certainly be a big asset and a wonderful asset to our board. Want to thank you for your leadership for CUB. This is such a good feeling of what you have accomplished and what you have done based on what we've asked you to do. And I want to thank you for your leadership. You
Thank
have
you.
set a tone that I think we all appreciate, and I think we're going to have a good year, but thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Combs, please.
A curious question for Greg, and then a more business-related one. Did we have an opportunity to send anybody, trucks or linemen to Florida for the hurricane?
No, we talked about that, and I told them that we had 2 that were ready to go, but I didn't want to stage. I didn't want to stage until there was an issue. They had thousands down there. So I didn't want our people to stage down there unless we had an actual need. So we really, we held back a little bit, and just as well because they didn't need it.
Well, I'd heard a comment from somebody that the only thing worse than the traffic trying to get out of Florida was
getting
the
back.
trucks going down
That's
there.
exactly right. Well,
A lot of
we
trucks.
we held off, and I told them I need a real need instead of a stage.
We did release our contract
Right.
crews to go though.
That's right.
In my past, we've always had a program where a supervisor or a manager could recognize an employee with a $10, $15, $25 gift certificate to Harrison's or something like that for good work. Do we do anything like that?
No, we do not.
Something you'd want to consider?
Well, every good program has a downside to it because we don't exchange gifts at Christmas time. We don't have pools for parties and things like that. We try not to make, because it gets into personalities, and then how do you judge and evaluate that? Where you start out with good feelings, there's an opportunity for people to get their feelings hurt, and I don't want that. I don't want to do that, and then we don't even use Cub money to buy lunches. Our lunch, we don't do it for anybody. When I go out to lunch, somebody else is buying, Well, I'm not pulling out our card or Cub's card. And for us to do anything like that, it's ratepayers' money, for a luncheon. There are utilities that give TVs away to their employees. I mean, big high definition TVs and laptops, and we don't do anything like that. We give great benefits. We pay very well, and that's pretty much it.
But I guess I've always seen it as a positive thing when we've done it, that individual recognition occasionally with a small token, doesn't have to be a TV.
What we do,
Works well.
of course, nothing speaks like the wallet. What we do for the achievers, for example, in our line crews, we evaluate them and then we give them, based on a numerical weighted number, that they can actually get in a year up to 10% of their base rate in addition. But that's only good for the year because they get reevaluated instead of raising them. So all linemen are on the same rate, but their contribution and achievement can push them up. And then that 10% rate rivals a KUB rate. Do you see? So essentially, they can make what a KUB lineman makes if they, depending on their contribution and their evaluation period. Now, we don't have any people with a 10s, but we have a lot with 4%, and then that goes back in the can. So we do try to recognize exemplary folks, especially in our blood and flesh and blood group out there with our linemen.
I expect that's not a public recognition, though.
No.
Which is where what I'm
Right.
coming from has a lot of value.
Well, let me just take that under
In consideration.
and chew on
Yeah,
that.
sure. Anything else, Steve?
That's all.
Well, if there's no further business come for this board, I will close. I hear a motion.
I'll make a motion.
So moved.